The story of the film begins in outer space, where a group of astronauts are working on a mining station. Everything seems normal until all of a sudden, a massive explosion rocks the station. The astronauts have no choice but to rush toward the escape pods to try and save their lives. One of the astronauts, Troy Hallway, manages to get into an escape pod. A few hours later, Troy wakes up inside his pod. He is badly hurt, and sadly, the other person in the pod with him is already dead. At first, Troy is confused and doesn't know what's going on. He sits there, shocked and dazed, trying to make sense of everything. After a little while, Troy forces himself to stay calm. He checks the pod's systems, hoping to find some help, but most of the equipment is broken. The navigation system is down, and the radio doesn't work either. Only a small handheld device is still working, which lets him control a few basic functions of the pod. Troy is injured and alone, floating helplessly in space. Then finally he hears a voice over the radio. It's Commander Roberts from a nearby station called Hathor 18. Roberts asks Troy what happened. Troy explains that he and his team were working on the asteroid drill when something went terribly wrong. The mining station started to fall apart, and they had to evacuate quickly. Now his escape pod is drifting through space with no way to steer it. He says the pod's power is running low, and only a few systems are still working. The life support, the radio's cooling system, and a small part of the communication link. When Roberts asks about the rest of the team, Troy's voice grows heavy. He tells him that everyone else is gone. He is the only survivor. The problem now is that Troy doesn't even know where he is. Luckily, the station picks up a faint signal from the bracelet Troy's wearing. Roberts says they can find him, but it will take some time to reach him. Troy will have to hang on, alone, injured, and floating in the endless darkness of space until help can arrive. The good news was that Troy wasn't too badly hurt. He had a bump on his head, but nothing serious. Wanting to make sure everything was okay, Troy asked Roberts if he could speak to his old commander, Miller, the one who was in charge of their mission before. But Roberts calmly told him that things had changed. She was now the commander. Troy didn't like that. For a moment, there was some tension between them. Troy didn't fully trust her, and they argued a little. But Roberts stayed firm. She told Troy that if he wanted to survive, he would have to listen to her and follow her instructions carefully. Since all the pod's medical systems were broken, Roberts asked Troy to examine himself. She needed to know if he was thinking clearly. Troy reported the bump on his head but insisted it wasn't anything major. To be sure, Roberts asked him a few questions. Simple things to check his memory and awareness. Troy answered all of them correctly, which made Roberts feel a little more confident about his condition. Troy then asked why he couldn't contact the main base. Roberts explained that their system had been damaged during the explosion. A small team of 4 people was working hard to repair it. Until it was fixed, Troy would only be able to talk to her directly. Then Roberts gave him some important news. They had found his exact location. The rescue team would reach him in about 75 minutes. It was a relief, but it came with a serious problem. Troy's escape pod was drifting straight toward the sun. If they didn't rescue him in time, he would burn up in the intense heat. To make matters worse, the pod systems were failing even faster than expected. Suddenly, the cooling system broke down. The temperature inside the pod started to drop quickly. Troy was in danger of freezing to death from hypothermia long before the sun could reach him. Roberts urgently told him he had to manually turn off the cooling system to stop the pod from losing heat, but Troy hesitated. If he shut down the cooling and the pod got too close to the sun, the radiation could be deadly. He could be burned alive by the sun's rays. Instead, Troy suggested a safer plan. If the temperature inside got dangerously low, he would put on his spacesuit. The suit would help protect him from the freezing cold, at least for a while. But Troy had another worry on his mind. Even if Roberts and her team managed to reach him, how would they save him? The pod's airlock and thrusters were badly damaged. Roberts explained to Troy that because his escape pod was still pressurized, when he opened the hatch, the force of the air rushing out would push him toward the Hathor 18 station. They would be waiting there to catch him. Troy was still unsure about the plan. He had lost a lot of hope by now. He didn't believe it would really work. But Roberts stayed calm and told him that even if there was only a 1% chance of saving him, she would still try everything to rescue him. Troy asked her why she was going through so much trouble just for him. After all, he said, he was just an ordinary worker, not someone important. But Roberts simply brushed off the question, making it clear that every life mattered. Troy then asked if he could make a call home, just to hear his wife's voice. Roberts said she would try to set up a call for him within an hour. She promised to do her best. While they waited, Roberts asked Troy if the mining company had known that the station's equipment was being pushed to its limits. Troy said yes. They had gotten direct orders from the company to keep working at full capacity. The company was greedy, he said, and now they were the ones paying the price for it. Meanwhile, inside the pod, the cold kept getting worse. The temperature was dropping fast. Roberts explained that Troy had 2 spacesuits with him, and each suit would only give him about 15 minutes of extra oxygen. Since it would still take about an hour for the rescue team to reach him, he needed to survive inside the pod without using the suits for as long as he could. Once the team got closer, he could put a suit on. Troy agreed. He was trying to stay strong. But then he noticed something terrifying. There were cracks forming in the pod's cabin glass. Roberts warned him that the glass wasn't built to handle both extreme heat and freezing cold at the same time. If he didn't act fast, the cracks would grow, and the pod could break apart. She told Troy he had to turn off the cooling system immediately. That would help stabilize the temperature inside and stop the glass from cracking further. But Troy, overwhelmed by fear and desperation, shouted that he needed to talk to his wife right now. Roberts stayed firm. She told him that if he didn't shut off the cooling system first, he might never get the chance to speak to anyone again. Troy grabbed the lever with his gloved hand, but the metal was so cold that his glove and fingers stuck to it. It hurt badly, but he didn't let go. Pushing through the pain, he finally managed to shut off the cooling system. He stumbled back to the cabin, and just then, Roberts reconnected with him. Troy told her that when he had gotten up from his seat earlier, he noticed something else. A wound in his stomach. A piece of debris was stuck in him. Now, with the rising temperature, he knew the bleeding would get worse, and the pain would increase. He needed to close the wound fast. Troy searched the body of his dead companion for anything useful. In the man's pocket, he found a small photo and a lighter. With no better option, Troy used the lighter to burn the wound closed. The pain was unbearable. He screamed, and then everything went dark. When Troy woke up again, he immediately reconnected with Roberts. She sounded scared and worried. She told him that the temperature would keep rising, and he needed to be ready. Troy, still weak, asked again if he could speak to the old commander, the one he trusted. Roberts paused. After a moment, she admitted the truth. The commander had died in the explosion. She hadn't told Troy earlier because she didn't want him to panic. Before Troy could process this, a sudden hit shook the pod. Debris had slammed into it. His capsule started spinning wildly. Feeling dizzy and hopeless, Troy told Roberts not to come for him anymore. He said it was too late. He wasn't going to survive, but Roberts begged him to hold on. She told him not to break the connection, no matter what, but Troy had given up. He crawled to the hatch and tried to open it, planning to end it all. Just then, another piece of debris hit the pod, and the spinning stopped. Troy collapsed back, dazed but alive. He weakly asked Roberts what he needed to do now to survive. Roberts told him to hold on for just 10 more minutes. The temperature would rise higher, but after that, he should put on his evacuation suit, which would give him about 15 minutes of oxygen. By then, they would reach him. Troy nodded slowly. He said he wanted to talk to his wife. He needed to tell her he was sorry. He also mentioned he had a young son. Before he could say anything more, another piece of debris hit the capsule again. This time, it tore a hole in the side. The pressure inside the pod started dropping fast. Realizing he had no time to lose, Troy quickly pulled on his spacesuit, sealing himself inside as the air hissed out around him. A little while later, the emergency lights inside Troy's capsule flickered on. Roberts got back in touch with him over the radio. She told Troy that his life support battery still had about 95% left, but his oxygen was dangerously low, only 18% remaining. Hearing this, Troy made a decision. He decided he would go outside and try to seal the hole himself to bring back the pressure inside the pod. But he knew the truth. If he went out there, he wouldn't survive for long. The capsule had drifted very close to the sun now, and stepping outside would expose him to deadly heat and radiation. He would have only a few minutes to live. Troy told Roberts again that she should leave. He didn't want her risking her crew's lives to save him, but Roberts refused. She told him she had strict orders to rescue him no matter what. She explained that if even one crew member survived, if Troy lived, the company that owned the mining station would be protected. There would still be investigations, but the company wouldn't be shut down completely. Troy felt heartbroken hearing this. It hurt to know the company was only trying to save him for their own selfish reasons, not because they cared about him. But Roberts quickly added something else. She said that even if she hadn't been ordered, she still would have come to save him. She said it because she truly wanted to help. Troy thanked her for that. Still, he was losing hope. Troy said he would soon die from radiation anyway, and begged her one last time to leave and not waste her life for him. Feeling emotional, Troy started talking about his family. He said that when his son was just 6 years old, Troy had accepted a job in space. He had chosen his career over staying with his family. Now so close to death, he realized how badly he wanted to tell his wife and son that he was sorry. Roberts then opened up about her own pain. She told Troy that she had lost her 7-year-old daughter. After her daughter's death, her husband couldn't cope with the grief and left her. Ever since then, she said, all she had wanted was for someone to simply tell her they loved her again. Troy listened, deeply moved by her story. The pain in both their hearts felt heavy, floating between them in the silence of space. Tears in his eyes, feeling the weight of it all, Troy quietly ended the connection. He didn't want Roberts to hear his final moments. Troy was sitting quietly, waiting for death to come. But then, he suddenly remembered something. His partner had a pair of new prototype gloves in his suit. Without wasting time, Troy pulled off his own gloves and quickly put on the new ones. He contacted Roberts and asked her how he could fix the hole. Roberts told him he would have very little time. As soon as the pod turned away from the direct sunlight, he would have to move fast and seal the hole before the radiation could burn him. Troy took a deep breath, gathered all his courage, and stepped out. He worked quickly, patching the hole in the capsule. But by the time he finished, his oxygen level had dropped to just 3%. Roberts urgently told him to get back inside the capsule immediately. Troy was so weak from the lack of oxygen that he almost fainted. But somehow, he pushed himself with all the strength he had left, climbed back inside, and turned on the emergency oxygen tank. But things were getting worse. The capsule had drifted even closer to the sun, and the intense rays were starting to burn Troy's face. Roberts shouted over the radio, telling him to eject from the capsule right away because she could now see him from the station. Troy, exhausted and hopeless, told Roberts to stay back, that he wouldn't make it. But Roberts refused to give up. She yelled, "I will not give up. We're almost there." Hearing her voice and thinking of his son, Troy found new strength. He said to himself, "I will not give up." Just then, a call from his wife finally connected. Hearing her voice gave him even more hope. Troy then shouted to Roberts, "I'm coming!" We see Roberts' station pulling up right next to Troy's capsule. The final moment shows the capsule's window shattering and Troy being pulled out into space, and that's where the story ends. The ending is left open. It's unclear if Troy survived or not. Some viewers believe Troy died, while others believe Roberts managed to save him at the last second. And so, friends, this was the story of the film Solace. We hope you enjoyed the video. Please share your thoughts about the story in the comments.